Imagine this: a night without a sound. Above, the stars quietly cast their light down on a ground that has changed its shape a million times. Beneath your feet are the layered sediments of time, where every grain of sand may be the ash of a city, and every boulder might once have been the dome of a lost world. Then a thought stirs, small but not easy to ignore. Are we truly the first civilization on this earth? If there were others who knew how to dream, to build, to look up at the sky, before us, what made them disappear? And when time runs its full circle, will someone, far in the future, ask these very questions about us? Time, I wonder. Where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Funny, isn't it? We're talking about ancient civilizations, yet here we are sharing this small moment across space and time. Wherever and whenever you are, I'm truly glad you're here. If you enjoy this gentle kind of question, I'd be grateful if you'd like or subscribe. It helps this faint, dreamy signal find its way to other curious minds. Of course, no pressure, just an invitation, like a faint footprint that, if you look closely, might lead somewhere unexpected. There is a moment of silence after we ask ourselves, are we truly the first civilization? A question that seems small, yet when it sounds in the dark of the cosmos, it echoes with the weight of billions of years. To answer it, we must look deeper, not only into the earth, but into the heart of time. Because to understand what we are, we must know how long Earth lived before we arrived. Time is something we feel, but rarely can we picture it. A minute can drag on forever when we're waiting. A year can flash by in a blink when we look back. But to Earth, a year, a century, even a millennium are only specks of dust drifting in the wind of eternity. Geologists call this idea deep time. It is the planet's yardstick, measured not in days and months, but in cycles of tectonics, extinction, and rebirth. Imagine we're opening a book, each page a million years. That book has more than 4,500 pages, and only in the half line at the bottom of the last page does humanity begin to write the first letters of its own history. Seen at that scale, everything we call ancient, the pyramids, Egyptian civilization, the Roman Empire, are only a few grains of sand dropped on the beach of time. Even human history, about 200,000 years, hasn't scratched the surface of the primeval book Earth has been writing for billions of years. If we compressed Earth's entire history into a single year, the first life would appear around March. Dinosaurs would stride in around November, and humans would arrive 10 minutes before midnight on December 31st. In those 10 minutes, we built everything: cathedrals, cities, knowledge, wars, music, the internet, and the very question, are we truly the first? But there is a humbling truth beneath that dusty span of time. Earth doesn't need us to tell its story. It has told its story for billions of years, through rock, fire, and water. The mountain ranges we see today were once seafloors. The oceans we gaze upon were once deserts. And those winding rivers are merely scars left by Earth's many molts. Perhaps the hardest thing to believe is that every trace of a former age can be erased, then written anew, as if this planet knows how to regenerate itself and how to hide its own past. If you hold a small pebble in your hand, consider that you are touching a fragment of memory older than any religion, any language, any civilization. A grain of sand in your palm may once have lain on the floor of an ancient sea, then been lifted to a mountain peak, then weathered down, carried off, and returned to dust again. Each such cycle lasts hundreds of millions of years. A breath so slow we cannot feel it, yet Earth keeps breathing that way unceasingly. When we grasp deep time, we begin to sense the fragility of human memory. Our history is written on paper, carved into stone, but with enough time, even stone learns how to dissolve. So if there were others before us, a civilization far older, not by thousands but by millions of years, would anything of theirs still survive? The answer is almost certainly no. Not because they never existed, but because Earth is a master craftsperson of forgetting. It does not keep the features of its own offspring. It grinds, melts, buries, then raises the new. And with each such turn, history is rewritten from the beginning. Not in letters, but in the architecture of rock, in the tilt of sediments, in the fossils of beings that once breathed. If we are the historians of the cosmos, then Earth is an epic written in silence. And in that epic, every empire, every dream, every human voice is only a small ink stroke on a page already fading. This does not render our existence meaningless. Quite the opposite. It lets us feel the beauty of the moment more keenly. Because when we know we are only a flash in the universe's long night, we cherish each minute more. And when we look up at the sky, we see not only stars, but the memories of distant ages reflected through time. The awareness of deep time is not only a scientific concept, it is a philosophical lesson in humility. It reminds us that history did not begin with us, and may not end with us. Earth was green long before humans knew to name the color, and it will remain green, or red or ashen white, when our memory is only a thin layer of sediment within stone. Try to imagine. If, across those billions of years, there was another civilization, born, grown, radiant, then gone, would we still recognize them? Or has everything been ground into minerals, circulating in Earth's bloodstream, now lying just beneath our feet, hidden in the very stone we step on every day? Perhaps that is why the first question, are we truly the first, feels even more beautiful, not because we need an answer, but because it forces us to look at the length of time and the brevity of existence. Each of our breaths, measured against the planet's turning, is only a small flare that streaks and vanishes. And yet within that fleeting instant we know we are alive, and we are asking about those who once lived before us. Deep time is not meant to frighten us. It is meant to remind us that everything has its place in the eternal flow. That no matter how great a civilization may become, it will turn to dust, and that dust will become the ground upon which another life stands. Perhaps, somewhere in the ancient rocks, there remain traces of other hands, other gazes, other minds that wondered about the universe exactly as we do today. We have not found them, but perhaps it is deep time itself that shelters them, keeping the secret until we are ready to understand. And when we realize this, we begin a new chapter in the journey. From observing the planet's surface, to listening to what lies beneath it, chemical signals, anomalous sediments, the whispers of stone and dust. Because if time is an ocean, we have only just dipped our fingers in. The rest, deep, dark, and boundless, is still waiting for us to dive. And there, the next chapter of the story begins, where scientists like Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank begin to ask, if a civilization once existed within deep time, how would we find their traces? On time's long road, humans often tell themselves we are the ultimate product of evolution, that the history of intellect begins with us. But one day, two scientists looked into Earth's book and asked a question that made the research world pause. If there was an industrial civilization before humans, would we be able to recognize their traces? That question did not come from a work of fiction, but from two real scientists, Gavin Schmidt, director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and Adam Frank, an astrophysicist at the University of Rochester. They are not UFO hunters, nor archaeologists in love with myths. They are minds accustomed to seeing Earth as a planet, and when you look that way, you cannot help but notice that what humans are doing may well have happened before. Their idea is called the Silurian hypothesis. The name sounds odd, inspired by a species from British science fiction, an intelligent reptilian race said to have ruled Earth hundreds of millions of years before humans. A touch of humor in the name, but beneath it lies a hypothesis as serious as it is chilling. If such a civilization existed within deep time, could we find them in the geologic record? Because, as Schmidt and Frank point out, if an industrial civilization had flourished tens of millions of years ago, then by the planet's rules, every material trace would have been erased. No monuments, no machines, no cities. The only thing left would be chemical traces. And so the two scientists began to reason like planetary detectives. They did not look for pyramids or artifacts. They looked for invisible fingerprints in the structures of soil, air, and water. Because they understood that any industrial civilization, human or otherwise, must leave its mark upon its planet. If they burned fuel, atmospheric carbon would shift. If they mined metals, the concentrations of rare elements would rise. If they manufactured chemicals, synthetic molecules would appear in sediments. And if they expanded too quickly, the biosphere would react. Extinctions, climate shifts, ecological imbalance. Sound familiar? Because it is what we are doing now. Schmidt and Frank call this the industrial fingerprint, a signal every civilization, at a certain stage, will leave behind. The problem is, that signal does not last forever. It fades with time, buried, recycled, dissolved in new tectonic cycles. And after a few million years, only a faint smudge remains within the rock layers, if anyone is keen enough to notice. So their question is not, did someone come before us? It is, if they did, are we clever enough to recognize them? Picture this. Suppose a civilization existed 50 million years ago, when Earth's climate was warmer and rainforests reached the poles. Suppose they developed technology, energy, industrial networks, and vanished by a self-inflicted upheaval, much like the one we fear today. After millions of years, all they would leave would be a thin global anomaly in the sediments, a sudden spike in CO2, a large load of plastics or synthetic compounds, a strange shift in carbon isotope ratios. Sound familiar? Because that is the Anthropocene, the human epoch we are imprinting upon Earth now, a fragile stratigraphic marker of a time when an intelligent species altered its planet. Sound familiar? What is worth pondering is this: as Schmidt and Frank describe how to search for a lost civilization, they are simultaneously sketching our own portrait in the future. They ask, if millions of years from now, someone, another species, or another civilization, digs into the soil where we once stood, what will they see? Perhaps a peculiar carbon streak in an ice core, perhaps microplastics in deep-sea sediments, perhaps traces of fallout from nuclear testing, and perhaps a sudden drop in biodiversity, evidence of a mass extinction wrought by human hands. That will be what remains of us, a thin inkstroke in the planet's diary. The Silurian hypothesis does not claim that anyone existed before humans. It asks, if they did, what would the evidence look like? And that question matters more than the answer, because it forces science to look at itself, to face the limits of its own perception. Ordinarily, when we see chemical shifts in rock, we attribute them to volcanoes, to climate, to asteroids. We rarely think, this might be the work of a bygone civilization. Not because that is absurd, but because we were never taught to ask that way. Schmidt and Frank call it the blind spot of science. Not the place where we lack data, but where we lack imagination. Science tends to look only for what it believes exists. What lies beyond its frame is often dismissed as an unnecessary hypothesis. Yet sometimes, imagination is the first step to discovery. The Silurian hypothesis is not meant to prove aliens or Atlantis, but to widen the frame, that a civilization can arise and vanish entirely within nature's embrace, and Earth is powerful enough to plane away every trace. This is not only an intellectual exercise, it is also a mirror held up to the present. Because when we peer into the soil and wonder about those who stood there, we also glimpse our own fate. The Silurian hypothesis makes us ask, if Earth can forget a civilization that endured for millions of years, will it remember us, newcomers of a few fleeting moments? If the existence of a species can be pressed into a few centimeters of sediment, what do monuments, machines, and dreams amount to? Not to make us bleak, but to remind us of the fragility of intellect within the flow of matter. What makes the Silurian hypothesis special is not the evidence, but the stance. A reminder that in this universe, we do not have the right to assume we are unique. Because Earth's history is too long, and intelligence may have bloomed and withered many times before we opened our eyes to the sky. Perhaps there once was a time when another civilization knew how to harness energy, to dream, to love, and then lost itself to its own power. And perhaps now they are the rock dust in the foundation beneath our feet. If so, the only difference between them and us is that we still have the chance to recognize this before it is too late. The Silurian hypothesis opens a new way of seeing that science is not only measurement but also memory, the planet's memory, read through stone, through the tiniest perturbations in atomic structure. And if there is any place that preserves every story that has happened, it is Earth itself. A mother, both generous and severe, both nurturing and forgetful. When the two scientists finished their paper in 2018, they did more than publish a study. They planted in humanity's mind a beautiful seed of doubt. A gentle reminder that we may not be alone in the river of history, only that those before us have traveled too far in time for anything but the silence of stone to testify. And perhaps, hundreds of millions of years from now, there will be other beings standing on Earth's surface, lifting a rock sample and asking of us, just as we ask today, who were they? Where did they go? And did they once believe they were the first? There's an old saying among geologists, rocks don't speak, but they never forget. After Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank proposed the Silurian hypothesis that if an industrial civilization existed before humans, its evidence might lie in the planet's chemistry, a new question opened. If Earth knows how to remember, where does it keep its memory? We usually think of history through the tangible, monuments, ruins, bones, pottery, metals. But in deep time, those all dissolve. Cities collapse, stone weathers, bones turn to dust, and in the end, every civilization becomes an invisible trace in soil and air. Thus, when the two scientists began searching, they looked not in museums but in the periodic table. For if any intelligence existed before us, they must have left subtle misprints in the planet's chemistry, fingerprints that cannot be scrubbed away, hidden in the atmosphere, in the oceans, and in rock sediments. Whenever a civilization learns to make energy, whether by wood, coal, or fossil fuels, their planet notices first, because the atmosphere is the most truthful diary of intellect. Carbon comes in many forms, or more precisely, isotopes, lighter and heavier versions of the same element. In nature, their ratios are steady as a heartbeat, but when a species begins burning ancient fuels, coal, oil, gas, that ratio is disturbed. Carbon-12 rises, while carbon-13 falls. That is the signature of industry, a chemical signal that no natural process produces at a global scale. And it is exactly what is being written into rock today, the signature humanity is inadvertently leaving to the future. If, tens of millions of years from now, someone cores into the strata of the 21st century, they will see a thin gray band, a small deviation in carbon ratios, and know that a civilization once lit its present by burning its future. Carbon is not the only narrator. Rare metals, lithium, cobalt, neodymium, or iridium, are also the script of an age. These elements do not concentrate at high levels unless there is industrial extraction. They are used to make batteries, circuits, computers, phones, and over millions of years, even if the structures fall, the metals remain, hidden in the ground like an ashen layer of technology. If an ancient civilization ever entered an electronic era, their traces might be odd spikes in rare element concentrations, accumulated within ocean sediments. Scientists call these unnatural geochemical signals, places where Earth seems to have swallowed something unfamiliar. An excess of metals that nature would not have produced by herself. These are tiny clues, yet enough for another intelligence to ask, what happened here? If metals are the ashes, then plastic is the ghost of our age. It is born from petroleum, the fossils of ancient life, reassembled into billions of objects that do not decay. No other creature on this planet makes anything like it. Ironically, plastic may be the only human fossil that endures for millions of years. Scientists have begun using a new word, plastiglomerate, plastic rock, formed when melted plastic fuses with sand, ash, and natural debris. These artificial stones are being found everywhere, on Hawaiian beaches, in deserts, even in the Arctic. They are the geological relics of the Anthropocene, and may persist for millions of years as the fossils of a man-made epoch. If another civilization once crafted similarly durable materials, we might recognize them through fossilized polymers, because nothing in nature mimics the molecular architecture of such synthetic substances. One of the strongest marks humans have left is artificial radioactivity. Since the 1940s, nuclear tests have sown across the globe elements nature does not make: plutonium-239, cesium-137, technetium-99. These nuclides have half-lives from thousands to millions of years, and they will remain long after all buildings fall. In future sediments, Their layer will become a global stratigraphic marker, much as we now identify the Cretaceous by the iridium layer from an asteroid. If an ancient civilization reached nuclear capability, they too would leave such radioactive wounds. And perhaps somewhere in the rock, those signals have been etched, only we have not yet learned to read them. Intelligence does not only create, it also breaks balances. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the clearer the changes in the biosphere. Humans have erased thousands of species in mere centuries. In the fossil record of the future, this will appear as a sudden die-off, with clear signs: a drop in biodiversity, a surge in human-tolerant species. Something similar may have happened before. Paleontologists have found periods in the past when carbon spiked, climates warmed, and life died en masse, but the cause remains unclear. Could a few of those events be biosignatures of intellect? No one dares to claim so, but the thought, fragile as it is, still chills the spine. All these traces, carbon, metals, plastics, radioisotopes, are recorded in sediments, lake bottoms, sea floors, muddy layers, permafrost. They are the planet's hard drives. Each thin stratum preserves a snapshot of the world at the moment it formed. Temperature, chemicals, volcanic ash, pollen, microbes, everything writes itself there. If a civilization once lived, and if it was strong enough to alter the planet, then Earth has surely recorded it somewhere. But reading it is not easy, because Earth's recording is not a book, but music, a symphony of chemistry and time, of which we have heard only the opening notes. The Silurian hypothesis, and the entire idea of chemical traces of intellect, has forced science to look anew at itself. We once searched for intelligent life beyond Earth, in radio waves, starlight, technosignatures. But now we are learning to seek the traces of intellect on Earth itself. Not through language, but through atomic structure. Not through relics, but through delicate chemical misalignments. Changes so small that only a planet can feel them. This is not just science, it is a journey of awareness. For when we search for the traces of a lost civilization, we are really learning how to understand ourselves, to see that everything we make today is being written into stone, and Earth will read that story long after we are gone. But the story doesn't end here. Because once we begin to understand that intelligence can leave chemical traces, a new question arises. If such traces exist, why haven't we found them? Perhaps because we haven't dug deep enough into the strata, or because Earth has another mechanism, a self-renewing machine. It recycles its crust, subducts its oceans, and grinds all evidence back into magma. It doesn't only remember, it knows how to forget. And that is where we step into the next chapter. Earth, the perfect erasing machine. When we look up at the sky, we see an unchanging universe. The stars seem still. The constellations look the same as they did 1,000 years ago. But when we look down, beneath our feet, everything is changing. A small stone in your hand, seemingly motionless, is in fact the product of millions of years of motion, decay, and rebirth. And it is there, within the planet's silent motion, that a startling truth hides. Earth doesn't just preserve history, it knows how to erase it. A self-renewing machine, both the home of intelligence and the custodian who wipes away every trace of that intelligence. From the very first day of its formation, Earth has never stood still. Beneath the thin shell we call ground lies a seething ocean of magma, where colossal streams of matter move slowly like the planet's great breath. That motion, plate tectonics, is Earth's heartbeat. The crustal plates do not stay put. They drift, collide, sink, then rise elsewhere. Mountains are born, then worn away, oceans open, then are swallowed back into the deep. A single cycle can last hundreds of millions of years, and after each turn, Earth's surface is no longer the same. If there was ever a city, a temple, or even a civilization tens of millions of years ago, the odds are overwhelming that it was drawn down into the hot mantle, melted, and became part of new rock. No trace left for us to recognize, only minerals, heat, and imagination. When we speak of erasure, we often think of catastrophe, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods. But for Earth, erasure needs no violence. Time alone is strong enough. Wind, rain, and light, three seemingly gentle elements, are the most relentless abrasives nature ever made. They turn mountains into dust, rock into sand, then carry that sand away to begin a new life cycle elsewhere. A sturdy stone monument might endure for a few thousand years, but in 10 million years it will be buried, compacted, and turned into sediment. Just another thin layer among many in geology's diary. Even metals, no matter how durable, oxidize, dissolve, and are remade within the mineral cycle. What we call eternal is merely the illusion of a short memory. To Earth, everything is provisional. Earth is a patient artist. It does not destroy, it repaints. Every few 100 million years, this planet builds anew its skin, as if changing garments to step into another age. Geologists have discovered that the entire oceanic crust at present is younger than 200 million years, which means, if any civilization once lived upon continents now drowned beneath the seas, then every trace of them has long since vanished, not merely buried, but fully recycled. What remains, if anything, are only subtle shifts in the chemical architecture of rock, tiny ripples that only the most patient scientists can perceive. Earth, in a sense, is the finest revisionist historian in the universe. It needs no pen and paper, only time and temperature. Destruction and creation on Earth are two faces of the same hand. When mountains collapse, rocks decay, when seas rise, that's not only an ending but a beginning. Imagine, as a continent sinks, heavy stacks of sediment are driven tens of kilometers down, heat and pressure turn them into metamorphic rock, and in turn those rocks rise again, bringing new minerals, new colors, and a new history. Thus, on this planet, everything is reborn at the price of forgetting. To have a new mountain range, an older ground must be swallowed. To have an ocean, a continent must dissolve. To have life, billions of cells must die. Earth does not annihilate, it recycles memory. Even fossils, the sturdiest evidence science has ever found, are fragile on the scale of deep time. A fossil endures not because it is strong, but because it is lucky. It must fall into the right place at the right time, be buried quickly, spared from decay, and then be lifted back to the surface at just the right moment for us to find it. The odds are so small as to be almost zero. Apply that logic to the traces of intelligence, and we begin to see why everything vanishes with such frightening plausibility. Perhaps somewhere under 10 kilometers of sedimentary rock there lies a tiny sample holding a synthetic compound, a bead of silicon, a human-made metal crystal. But it may never rise again, because Earth is under no obligation to reveal its secrets. If time is Earth's hand, then erosion is its most delicate finger. Nothing is slower, and nothing is more thorough. One rainstorm cannot erase a mountain, but billions of storms over millions of years can. One river cannot swallow a continent, but the current of time can. Nature's patience is beyond any imagination. It needs no haste, it needs no rage, it only needs to persist, and everything else will fade. Ironically, life itself, not only geology, also helps erase the past. Microbes, roots, acids, and myriad small biological processes constantly break down anything that tries to endure. If a relic is buried, roots will pierce it. If there is a metal object, bacteria will corrode it. If there is a grand structure, weather will crack it, collapse it, and blend it with soil. Nature accepts nothing that stands still. In Earth's eyes, every structure, no matter how magnificent, is an opportunity for a new cycle to begin. Some say time heals all wounds, but for Earth, time does more than heal. It erases the scar. If a civilization came before us, they were not forgotten by tragedy, but by law. No one can defy this planet's self-renewing cycle. It has no intention, no emotion, only process. That is why we should not be surprised when we find nothing. What should surprise us is that we ever find anything at all. Our planet is a demanding storyteller. It writes extraordinary chapters in mountains, rivers, and living things, and then it tears out the old pages with its own hand. It leaves just enough for us to know a story was written, but never enough for us to read it whole. Perhaps that is why humans are born with a hunger for the past. We want to remember what Earth has forgotten. We want to piece together a book our planet itself has half burned. But perhaps within that very forgetfulness, Earth has taught us a vital lesson. Every civilization is one to be replaced, and it is precisely this that makes us humble. When we grasp that Earth is a perfect erasing machine, we begin to ask, then, if we ourselves were to vanish, what would happen? If humanity disappeared tomorrow, how long before our traces, our cities, roads, monuments, satellites, dissolve from this planet's memory? That is the question of the next chapter. If humanity vanished tomorrow, how long would Earth remember us? Suppose, right now, all humans suddenly disappeared. No catastrophe, no war, no warning. Just one morning, Earth awakens, and we are no longer here. No engines roar, no lights switch on, no human breath stirs the air. What happens next, and how long until Earth forgets we ever existed? Aircraft in flight lose guidance, slip off their paths, and fall into the sea. Subways stop in their tunnels. Cities remain lit through the first night, thanks to power plants still running on automation. But within hours, the lights begin to go out. Machines require human oversight. When fuel runs dry or systems fault, they shut themselves down. And neighborhood by neighborhood, darkness spreads. The whole planet grows quiet, a quiet no one has heard in hundreds of thousands of years. Only wind, water, and the chorus of insects slowly returning. Without humans, the boundary between city and forest dissolves at once. Wolves step out of the woods, birds return to rooftops, fish swim in artificial lakes, grass pushes through the cracks in brick, saplings sprout from fissures in concrete. Creatures once pushed beyond the edges of civilization now come back as if they had never left. But a subtler change is underway. Cooling systems at nuclear power plants stop. After a few days, reactors overheat and explode, releasing clouds of radiation, like the final reminder of a vanished intelligence. Cities are soon choked with weeds, vines swallow buildings, glass shatters, iron rusts, and every rain turns streets into little streams. Wildlife expands its range, elephants on boulevards, leopards hunting in parks, birds nesting on bronze statues. Life returns as if repainting an old canvas we left unfinished. Infrastructure collapses faster than we think. Bridges fail from corrosion, buildings fall from damp, dams crack without inspection. Earth begins to flatten what we raised. Industrial zones, airports, train yards turn into wetlands and young forests. Highways become damp ribbons where grasses knit tightly. Everything that once stood for modernity is now the husk of old dreams. Glass towers, seemingly immortal, start to fissure as temperature swings and water creep into steel frames. Coastal cities slowly drown as seas rise. The world map shifts again as it has for 4 billion years. All structures of steel and concrete collapse. Plastics decay under sun and rain. Domesticated animals largely fail to survive, but wild species are born anew, adapting to a world without us. The once whirling cities are only ruins under forest canopies. No engine's noise remains, only wind whistling through rusted pipes, a mournful music composed by silence itself. From orbit, Earth looks green again. No more scars of urban night glow. This planet appears as if it never knew humankind. Metals have dispersed, concrete has powdered, glass has splintered, wiring has become minerals. Our grandest works, the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids, the Statue of Liberty, even the Great Wall, are only ripples in sediment. Synthetic materials are gone. What plastics remain are buried deep in mud, blended with sand and rock to form plastiglomerates, artifacts that will make future scientists marvel. Why are there such peculiar polymers in this geologic layer? Underground, radioactive repositories still exist, but their seals gradually weaken, and artificial nuclides leach into soil, like humanity's final whisper to the planet. If someone arrived on Earth, then they would not find ruins or works. No houses, no statues, no machines. But if they drilled into the ground, they would see something strange. A thin chemical layer, rich in carbon, rare metals, radioisotopes, and synthetic compounds. This is humanity's stratigraphic fingerprint, a faint ink stroke in Earth's book. We would no longer exist, but our chemistry would remain. And as the Silurian hypothesis once suggested, if someone came before us, perhaps they too left similar faint lines, only deeper in rock, farther back in time. No recognizable ruins would remain. No material would keep its original form. Continents would have drifted hundreds of kilometers, new seas formed, new mountains risen. If someone cored into the strata of the Anthropocene, they would see an odd thin band, only a few centimeters thick, yet containing the signs of an anomalous event. A rapid global temperature rise, a mass extinction, a sudden increase in rare elements, and then silence. No one would know the cause, maybe a volcanic outburst, an asteroid, or a civilization. But there would be no certain way to tell, because Earth would have done its job, erasing and renewing. Everything that was us becomes dust. Dust joins the wind. Wind passes through forests. Forests become soil, and soil gives birth to new life. Perhaps millions of years hence, another species will walk this ground, see strange mineral streaks in the rock, and wonder, just as we do today, was there someone before us? If they are curious enough, they will search. If they are humble enough, they will understand that every civilization is only a guest of time. The most terrifying thing in this vision is not annihilation, but the silence after annihilation. No one to retell our story. No one to remember the meaning of our paintings, our songs, our tongues. Everything vanishes like breath on glass. And yet perhaps this is what makes intelligence sacred. Because we know it is temporary, each moment of existence becomes precious. We cannot live forever, but we can understand, and in that understanding, we touch the eternal. And then, after millions of years of silence, Earth begins to write again. Not with letters, but with chemistry. Not with words, but with thinning layers of sediment. Within them, messages meant for no one, yet they persist, waiting for someone curious enough to read. We call it the language of strata. A language that needs no sound, in which stone recounts what humans have forgotten. That will be the story of the next part, the language of strata, when rock tells a tale. After humankind dissolves, Earth sinks back into its primordial breath, so slow that each cycle lasts millions of years. The first rains erase the outlines of streets, trees blanket the roofs, rivers change their courses, and over time, what was once a city becomes sediment. But do not think everything has vanished. Earth does not destroy memory, it hides memory in stone. If there is any book that records the planet's history most faithfully, it is the stratified layers. Each stratum is a page, written in dust, volcanic ash, dead organisms, and the chemicals of its age. They stack, press under weight, and preserve every change in the world, even if no one remains to read. Geologists call it the language of stone. A language without sound, only traces, ratios, and silence. By measuring carbon isotope ratios, they read past climates. By the color of soil, they infer oceans that rose and fell. By the metal content of clays, they learn whether life flourished or waned. These rocks, though cold, whisper stories of eras humanity never witnessed and perhaps will never fully understand. When we face a cliff, cut clean, bands of color appear. Gray, red, yellow, white. Each hue is a phase, a climate, a world. They are not static dividers. They are the rhythm of time. Each layer is a note, and the entire planet is a slow symphony stretched over 4.5 billion years. We live within a single beat, a moment so brief that even if we shout, the echo is too faint to mark the score. Yet what we do, emissions, plastics, metals, radiation, are off notes in that music. And though small, they are recorded in the language of chemistry. No pen writes longer than water. For water itself is Earth's most enduring author. As rivers run, they carry silt, and the silt carries the mountain's story. As rain falls, it dissolves the sky into soil, recording the atmosphere of its day. As oceans settle the bodies of the living, they write into stone a chapter of life and death. Each dust grain, each drop of water, each salt crystal is a word in the stratigraphic tongue. No one teaches them to write, yet they write, steadily, meticulously, without cease. And so, when we are gone, Earth continues the tale, like an ancient, patient storyteller, composing new chapters with a hand of stone and ink of time. It took thousands of years for science to grasp that rock is not mere matter, but hardened memory. With isotopic techniques, we can date layers of Earth, each eruption, each pulse of climate. The ice cores of Greenland and Antarctica hold tiny bubbles of air, the true breath of Earth from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Slice a rock and look under the microscope, and you'll see tiny circular marks, fossils of microbes. Every layer holds a span of life. Every grain holds a moment. Stack them, and we can hear time's music again. This language is for no ear, but for a mind that knows how to listen. One day, Millions of years from now, if someone or something has the patience to read the layers, they will see the human chapter, written with great clarity. An unusually thick band of carbon, a load of plastics and rare metals with no natural source, a thin streak of radioactivity, and the abrupt disappearance of thousands of species, all of it compressed into a few centimeters of sediment, an epoch, so brief it is only a comma in the planet's book, yet enough to bend the rhythm of life's symphony. And then, above that stratum, Earth writes on. The climate steadies, life burgeons in a different key, a new species, intelligent or not, arises. But whoever they are, they will read our traces and wonder, who were they? What happened to them? Strangely, stone never tells the whole tale. It keeps the data, cold numbers, chemical ratios, bands of sediment. Meaning the why, the feelings, the fears, the hopes, all of that is gone. When we read the language of strata, we hear only the echo of truth, not the voice of a soul. Perhaps that is the price of knowledge. We learn what happened, but never why. Earth does not divulge secrets, it only whispers with perfect silence. Even the stratigraphic language has rests, missing chapters, torn out pages. These are unconformities, places where rock was stripped away by erosion, then buried anew. Millions of years pass, and yet in Earth's archive that time does not exist at all. Perhaps, if a civilization came before us, it fell into one of those gaps. A span ground to nothing, swallowed by the crust's motion. A chapter erased so cleanly not even a punctuation mark remains. The deepest rocks we have quarried repeat the same refrain. Earth has been hotter, colder, louder, and sometimes something strange occurred. A sudden rise in carbon, a shift in the magnetic field, a layer rich in heavy metals of unknown origin. We can assign 100 hypotheses, volcanoes, asteroids, climate, but the most unsettling thing is not lacking an answer. It is that the answer may sit in plain sight, and we fail to recognize it. To understand the language of stone, we must learn not only to measure, but to imagine. Stratigraphy does more than reveal the past. It mirrors the present. When we see carbon soaring, plastics proliferating, radiation spreading, we know we are writing ourselves into the planet's record, not with letters but with chemistry, ink that cannot be erased. Grasp this, and we cease to see Earth as a stage and more as a companion, a presence that records everything we do, neither praising nor condemning, only keeping and waiting. And then sometimes, while reading stone's language, we encounter passages not part of our own story. Odd objects in ancient rock, chemical ratios that match no natural event, structures that seem deliberately formed. We call them anomalies, geological oddities. And here the old question resounds, are we truly the first? That will be the next chapter of this journey. Strange signals in stone, whose traces are these? When scientists learned to read the rock, they thought they had understood it all, that stratigraphy is only nature's record, the tale of mountains, rivers, climate, and time. But then, now and then, the rocks compose a difficult sentence. One that does not fit the rules, belongs to no cycle, and seems intentional. People call them anomalies, geological anomalies. And through those fissures in our understanding, the light of curiosity slips in. In Greenland, a layer of sediment was found with unusually high carbon-12, signaling a time when the planet warmed abruptly, eerily like the present. Curiously, it coincides with neither volcanoes nor asteroids. It unfolds gradually, as if a vast energy system switched on, then off. In the Southern Ocean, another team found thick sediment loaded with rare metals, including elements typically seen only in modern industrial extraction. Iridium, neodymium, and even traces of synthetic organics. They sit within rock over 50 million years old. Nature can scarcely arrange such a chemical palette, yet no one dares declare it the work of intelligence. Reading the rock, we grow used to nature's pulse. Eruption, sediment, sea retreat, life vanishes, life appears. But in some layers, the beat breaks, like a drum strike landing wrong in a gentle score. In certain Eocene strata around 55 million years ago, Earth's temperature leapt by more than 8 degrees within a few thousand years, a rise that seems achievable only with artificial emissions. A colossal surge of carbon, methane, and nitrogen flooded the air, then stopped, abruptly, as if an invisible hand flipped a switch. Nature rarely runs on-off, but intelligence does. In South Africa, in 1979, miners uncovered within ancient sandstone a small bluish-gray metallic sphere, dubbed the Klerksdorp spheres. Some bear evenly spiraled grooves, like work from a lathe. The host rocks age over 2.8 billion years. When the news spread, opinions split in two. Some called it proof of a prehistoric civilization. Others said it was natural, oxidized pyrite concretions formed under pressure. Truth likely lies somewhere between those poles. Sometimes, nature and intellect shape the same forms, for both obey the shared laws of energy and balance. Yet other structures remain, like Romania's stones that seem to grow, or the glassy layer in the Libyan desert, which can form only at temperatures beyond any known volcano. Some say it is the imprint of an ancient technological blast. Others whisper, perhaps a meteor. Across history, we have often met what exceeds our grasp. Before science, we called it miracle. With science, we call it anomaly. But by any name, the feeling is the same. Something tells us the picture is incomplete. Modern scientists do not claim a prior civilization, but they increasingly see that the geologic record holds much that's unresolved. There are climate swings that happen too fast, chemical shifts that don't align with natural cycles, and layers bearing energy signatures too high for nature alone. These are not proofs, but they are the shape of a question. A geologist once said, "We don't fear a wrong answer, we fear the right question." For if the strange signals in stone are indeed the legacy of an ancient civilization, that would rewrite the entire history of intellect. It would mean intelligence did not bloom once, but many times in many ages, each time leaving a trace, then fading. This does not diminish humanity, it deepens our humility. We are not evolution's pinnacle, only a brief chapter in the long story of mind. Science can measure, but rock can tell. Where the two meet, we get the rarest thing, a resonance between data and intuition. Geologists, standing before a layer hundreds of millions of years old, often feel as if they face an ancient storyteller, one who speaks in silence, each fracture a memory. They do not hunt for aliens or Atlantis, they seek the trace of existence itself. And sometimes in a thin, anomalous band of sediment, they glimpse themselves, the haunting of a species that thinks, afraid it was not the first, and more afraid it will be forgotten the same way. Perhaps the strange signals in rock are not from someone else, but Earth's own premonitions. Each chemical convulsion of the past, every warming, every extinction, is a quiet warning that the cycle is repeating, and we are overwriting old lines with new ink. When we burn fuel, vent gases, forge synthetic matter, we are crafting our own anomaly. We are writing another aberrant chapter into the language of stone. And millions of years hence, if someone finds it, they will ask as we do, who was here, and why did they vanish? The anomalies in stone do not force faith in myth. They invite a dialogue with time. They remind us that every piece of evidence is temporary, but the questions endure. Mystery is not science's enemy, but its engine. Because of what we do not yet understand, we keep searching, keep listening to our planet speak. And if someone truly lived before us, perhaps they too once listened, before dissolving into silence. There is a place on Earth that records more than any library, and we have yet to read it through. The sea. Beneath the water, billions of years of sediment lie still, holding every secret of life, and perhaps the memory of lost civilizations. If Earth is the book, the ocean is the stuck-together pages we have not yet pried apart, and in the next chapter we will dive into that darkness, where everything is erased and where everything begins again. If Earth is a book, the ocean is the sealed chapter, a chapter written in pressure, darkness, and the memory of billions of years. At the surface, the sea seems calm. Below, where light cannot reach, there is a world, colder, darker, more patient than anything we have known. All rivers flow to the sea, as all human stories at last flow to silence. Since the first civilizations, we have lived, died, and vanished by the water's edge. Ancient ports, coastal cities, ships that left and never returned, all in time swallowed by waves. And when the waves close, they leave no clamor, only a thin layer of sediment where memory becomes sand. Unlike the desert, which preserves through dryness, the sea is a perfect erasing machine. Underwater, metals rust, wood rots, stone is gnawed by tiny organisms, and all of it becomes silt, falling like ash through darkness. The ocean does not store, it digests. Every structure, every ship, every civilization that sinks is undone, returned to mineral, then drifted elsewhere, leaving no trace for those who come after. If any place on Earth can make every sign of intellect disappear, it is the deep seafloor. Yet the sea is also the planet's greatest library. Not because it keeps everything intact, but because it preserves change. In the depths, oceanographers drill and draw up cores tens of meters long. Within them, each thin layer records thousands of years. Black, an age of eruptions. Gray, ice retreat. Red, life's bloom, and sometimes a faint streak that defies explanation. A layer rich in carbon beyond nature's norm. A layer marked by unfamiliar polymers. Or microplastics, the first human artifact to reach even the Mariana Trench. If, millions of years from now, someone cores the seabed and finds these, they too may ask, is this the work of nature or of someone? Throughout the last century, humans have found countless lost cities beneath the sea. Pavlopetri in Greece, Dwarka off India, Yonaguni in Japan. They are not deep, only a few dozen meters underwater, but they have lain there for thousands of years, covered by sand and coral like forgotten dreams. Some say they are the evidence of tsunamis, of melting ice, of geological change. But in the dim light on the seafloor, amid faintly carved blocks of stone, we cannot help but ask, is this only the tip of a deeper memory? If the brightest civilizations all chose to live by the sea, then when the sea rose, it became the one to end every story. No one can hear the sea's true voice. Because the sea does not tell stories in words. The sea tells by repetition. Waves break every day. Currents carry every day. What sinks today will be ground down, dispersed, dissolved tomorrow. The sea's time is not measured in years, but in the pulse of tides. A civilization collapses. To the sea it is merely one wave upon the shore, then gone, like every other wave. Suppose the sea could remember, what would it keep? Perhaps not metal or stone, but sound. Songs on a ship's deck, prayer, engines howling at night, and the final silence after humans vanish. For throughout history, humans have left the most with the sea. Wrecks, works, waste, and dreams. Now the sea keeps them, not to punish, but to return. Each time the surf climbs the shore, it seems to hand us a shard of memory, lay it softly on the sand, and wait to see whether anyone is curious enough to pick it up. Scientists call the sea the planet's dynamic memory. Every climate shift, every change in the air, is imprinted in water before it is written into rock. When temperatures rise, the sea expands. When we burn fuel, carbon dissolves into water, turns to acid, and plankton die en masse. The sea is the truest mirror of the planet, and also its quietest judge. It does not punish, it merely reminds us that every act leaves a resonance, and one day, we ourselves will be the next sediments in its depths. When you hear the waves, we like to think the ocean is endless. In truth, the sea is fragile. A few centuries of mistakes can change its color, and a few degrees of warmth can change its life. So when you hear the waves, imagine you are listening to the breath of an ancient memory, and each breath records our footprints. If there is anything worth doing now, it is not to flee mystery, but to keep something for the sea to tell. Do the small, real things. Cut a little waste, keep a beach clean, teach a child to look at the ocean not only with eyes but with respect. For when we listen and steward, we continue an ancient tradition, the tradition of those who know how to listen to the planet they inhabit. Some say, we all come from the sea. Perhaps that is true, for the first DNA, the first cell, the first life all began in salt water. And perhaps in the end, we will return there as well. Not in body, but as elements. As chemical streaks, the sea will dissolve. Then Earth returns to its dawn, and the question, who was the first civilization, becomes meaningless. For the sea does not care who arrives first or last. It only cares that the current continues. Yet not every civilization leaves scars as deep as ours. Perhaps there were once thinking beings who chose to live lightly, to fold themselves into nature. leaving so few traces that time had no need to erase them. And their story will be the next chapter in this journey. Non-metal civilizations, those who walk lightly on the earth. We cannot keep the sea, but we can keep what the sea wishes to tell. Let us live lighter, more curious, and learn to hear the tales that come from water, from stone, from earth itself. If you feel you've just drifted across an ocean of reflection, press subscribe to continue this journey of listening to the universe's quiet stories with me. Stay. There is more to discover. Not all intelligence needs fire to cast light. Not all civilizations need metal to prove they existed. Perhaps there were those who came before us, yet they never raised walls, never burned fuels, never wanted to become a trace. They simply passed through this planet, light as wind, like the shadow of time itself. We are used to defining civilization by what is loud, by cities, by architecture, by the noise of machines and lights. But if true intelligence is the ability to understand in order to live, not to conquer in order to persist, then perhaps stillness is the highest sign of evolution. A civilization may be very wise, but if it chooses to live within the biosphere, without extraction, without ravage, then over time all traces of it will fade. And thus, we cannot find them, not because they never were, but because they never wished to be found. Perhaps they lived in forests, where the canopy rose higher than any temple, and every sound belonged to the wind. They may have built with bamboo, with soft stone, with clay, materials that vanish when the rains come. They knew how to farm, but left no fields. They could write, but with ink pressed from flowers, a script a single rain could carry away. And when they left, the forest closed as if no foot had ever passed. If any civilization truly harmonized with the planet, perhaps that is why we cannot see them. Imagine a civilization where waste does not exist. Everything created returns to nature without a trace. They might know biotechnology, crafting materials that fully decay, drawing energy from sun, wind, or living systems without leaving a scar upon the planet. Perhaps they used no metal, but biocompounds, algae, or self-renewing structures. Their buildings might bloom and disappear, like flowers opening and falling. In such a way, each life cycle is not a loss, but a breath in time with Earth. Look around. We see ecosystems so intricate they cannot be rebuilt. A forest is a perfect machine. Everything used, reused, decomposed, transformed. Nothing is thrown away. If nature has achieved the level of a total biotechnological system, why could a wise civilization not do the same? Perhaps truly mature civilizations are those that learn to live like a forest. No dominion, no residue, no demand to be remembered. Only existence, then disappearance. And in that disappearance, Earth loses nothing and gains more. When we look into the night sky, we see billions of stars, yet hear no signal. We call it the Fermi paradox. If there are so many civilizations in the universe, why do we not hear them? Perhaps the answer is simple. Civilizations wise enough choose silence. For once they grasp that energy and matter are temporary, that the greatest voice of mind lies not in monuments, but in understanding and restraint. They no longer need to broadcast. They only need to listen. Just as humanity, when truly wise, will not talk more, but listen more closely. If such a civilization once existed on Earth, we would find no bones, for they did not bury in stone. We would find no pottery or metal, for they had no need of them. We would not see cities, for they lived in cities that grew and decomposed by themselves. Perhaps they endured for tens of thousands of years, then faded with the first rains of the season, like sea foam dissolving into the ocean. And when we pass the places they lived, we see only green forest, golden sand, and sounds so small they feel like silence. Yet perhaps within that silence something still resounds, the echo of a mind that once knew how to tread lightly. Since appearing, humans have wanted to leave marks. We build, inscribe, remember, as if the fear of being forgotten were a second death. But perhaps some civilizations feared no such thing. They knew that all things return to dust, and dust is where mind truly rests. They did not seek immortality, they sought dissolution. Not to defeat time, but to live with it. Perhaps they achieved what we still pursue, perfect balance between existence and vanishing. If someone in a distant future finds Earth and reads today's sediments, they will see humanity's traces: plastic, radioactivity, iron, cement. But if they find the stratum of those who walk lightly, they will see nothing at all. And they may say, "There is nothing here, no civilization." And they would be wrong, for absence can be the deepest trace. A planet unscarred, a climate unbroken, a natural cycle unsevered. That is the legacy of those who knew when to stop. Perhaps, in every age, Earth has had such people, those who live lightly, without clamor, without relics, yet keep the world in balance, keep nature whole. They may not call themselves a civilization, nor seek anyone's recognition. They only need to exist, then quietly depart, like rivers passing through, carrying a story without leaving a word. Looking back, we may see that sometimes the lightest footprints travel the farthest. For within such silence is a form of intelligence that needs no proof, only the understanding that everything is living together and nothing belongs to anyone alone. Perhaps that is the true destination of every civilization, to learn how to exist without needing to prove existence. Stone may forget, the sea may erase, but humans tell. And in the stories told across thousands of generations, perhaps we preserve what even the planet cannot keep: memory. Before writing, all human knowledge was born by voice, passed from one mouth to another, from one generation to the next, like a small flame guarded through long nights. A story is not only entertainment, it is a map for survival. It teaches where water lies, where storms gather, when the sun will change its hue, and what waits behind the mountains. In song, in legend, in lullaby, there are shards of history, not carved in stone, but carved in collective memory. And sometimes that memory endures longer than any monument, because it moves with people. Most of humanity's oldest stories turn on cataclysm, loss, and rebirth. A great flood, a city sunk beneath the sea, a golden age gone overnight. From Sumer to India, from Greece to Aotearoa, all speak of a deluge, of an old world drowned, and a remnant who survived. Modern people call it myth, yet geologists, when they survey, find that roughly 12,000 years ago Earth truly endured a global rise in sea level, as ice melted after the last ice age. Those tales are not merely invention. They may be humanity's memory of real catastrophe, retold in the language of metaphor, and, over time, made into myth. There, myth and science touch in a shared effort to remember what was lost. Since we learned to speak, we have told stories of sky, earth, fire, and ourselves. Storytelling is how we resist time's silence. A storyteller by the fire is not merely entertaining. They are preserving history, passing to those who follow the memories that, if unsaid, would vanish forever. In Australia, Aboriginal peoples keep song lines, melodic routes across desert. By song alone, they locate mountains, springs, lakes, stars. These songs stretch back tens of thousands of years, and when compared with geographic data, researchers find they are astonishingly accurate. While rock erodes, language remains. While seas shift their flow, the song still points to water. Memory, when told with feeling, can outlive matter. But human memory does not only record, it recreates. Each generation, each teller adds a new detail, a new understanding. Over time, the story is no longer an event, it becomes meaning. Consider Atlantis, retold by Plato over 2 millennia ago. Perhaps it was only a moral allegory, or perhaps a dim memory of a real civilization lost to rising seas. Likewise, in Hindu tradition, the city of Krishna's Dwarka was said to sink beneath the waves, and today, off Gujarat, remains of an ancient, submerged city have indeed been found. Myth, it seems, is not merely imagination, but the way humans remember in the language of the soul. If all matter can be erased, then story is the one thing that can survive. Inuit accounts of a sky that changed direction helped scientists detect shifts in the polar magnetic field. Polynesian legends of vanishing islands match sea level rise after the glacial melt. Even Japanese tales of giant waves swallowing villages are precise descriptions of tsunamis, told before geology or ocean physics had a name. Such stories are not superstition, but tools of intelligent survival. Thus, without metal, without script, without maps, ancient peoples carried the memory of millennia by voice alone. And that is something even stone cannot do. Perhaps if a civilization older than ours ever existed, they too told stories, and some echo of them still resonates within humanity's memory today. Perhaps the legends of giants, of gods who fly, of golden ages when humans lived with nature, are memories that have turned into symbols. We need not insist they are factual, but we may believe that within every myth lies a kernel of memory, and when that kernel is told again and again, it never dies. Thus, the intelligence of humanity lies not only in what we build, but in how we remember, in how we tell, repeat, and trust that what we tell bears value beyond time. Science can measure rock and carbon, but only humans can measure the emotion of memory. An archaeologist may find a tool, but only a storyteller can make that tool speak. Thus, when we tell Earth's story, we are not only scientists, but keepers of memory. Memory is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, between what can be measured and what can only be felt. It is what helps us understand not only Earth, but ourselves. Rock can shatter, metal can dissolve, the sea can swallow, but a story, if retold, will travel on. Perhaps tens of thousands of years from now, Earth will have changed its shape, yet somewhere by a fire, another voice will rise, speaking of the time when the first people looked up and asked. And then, they will not need evidence, because memory will have done history's work, keeping the soul of what has passed. Sometimes, in the belly of the earth, amid layers of stone we think we know down to each grain, an object appears, one that should not be there. A sliver of metal in coal millions of years old, a carving on ancient rock that matches no known culture, a perfect sphere lying within sediments from an age before tools. And each time, the world bends down, stares at the speck of the past, and quietly wonders, is this nature's mistake or the voice of a civilization that vanished? Since the 19th century, miners, archaeologists, and farmers have occasionally unearthed the inexplicable: an iron nail deep within stone, a small bell inside coal, a smear of rusted metal fused in a fossil. Mostly, science dismisses them, calling them mistakes, or modern items that slipped into ancient cracks. And for the most part, that is likely true. But there are cases which, even after repeated scrutiny, still lack a reasonable explanation. They lie within undisturbed strata, with ages far older than any civilization we know. Such items are called out-of-place artifacts, objects out of place in time. They do not speak, but their mere existence makes history quiver. Not everything that looks artificial is made by humans. Nature can fashion curiosities, perfect pyrite spheres, spirals in stone formed by mineral flows, squares so coincidental they seem intentional. So scientists remain cautious. But certain forms, certain structures, are hard even for nature to mimic. An alloy composition that does not match its host geology, a repeated incision with precise ratios and angles, a shard of ceramic or glass inside rock too old to contain it. These things do not prove that someone was here, but they compel us to stretch imagination beyond ordinary timelines. Some out-of-place objects, after analysis, turn out to be natural crystals, yet with internal architectures strikingly akin to human-made alloys, as if nature were rehearsing the lessons of intellect billions of years before that intellect arrived. Perhaps they were not made by people at all. Perhaps Earth itself, with its own kind of intelligence, once experimented with such shapes, producing balances and proportions we believed only humans knew. It may be that intelligence is not the sole privilege of living beings. Perhaps it resides in the planet itself, in the way minerals arrange, in the mysterious geometries stone has long understood. There are objects that, though doubted, refuse to vanish from humanity's imagination. Like the Klerksdorp spheres of South Africa, smooth orbs with spiral grooves in rocks more than 2 billion years old, or the stone discs of China etched with spirals like rhythmic code, said to predate metal. Each time we try to explain them, they shift from evidence into symbol. No longer something to prove, but a reminder that history is not a straight line, but a spiral of memory. Science needs evidence, but memory and curiosity need empty spaces. It is those gaps that keep us searching. An out-of-place artifact need not prove a civilization before us. It only needs to exist and force us to ask, if someone had been here, how would we know? That question, more than evidence, is what keeps science moving. For science was not born to confirm, but to doubt honestly. Whether natural or artificial, out-of-place objects share a common trait. They are silent. They do not tell stories, but they do not disappear. They sit between two worlds, the world of data and the world of intuition. They are like commas in time's text, places where Earth pauses to breathe, then writes on. Perhaps within those commas, a civilization once paused to look around, to understand, then left without a word. One day, when strata have covered our cities, and Earth has flattened everything again, someone, or something, will dig up fragments from our time. A turbine blade, a curved shard of glass, a marble that was once a child's toy. They will look at it and ask the very questions we are asking now. Where did this come from, and who were they? In this way, history completes its circle. When we are curious about the past, we are also writing the script for our own future. Perhaps out-of-place artifacts are not proof of those who lived before us, but proof of Earth's capacity to remember. For Earth does not forget, it only hides. Within stone, ore, and sand, it keeps stories we have not yet learned to read. And perhaps those objects, whether natural or crafted, are merely the planet's marginalia, written in a language that needs no reader, waiting for someone patient and humble enough to understand that sometimes mystery is the final form of intelligence. The soil beneath our feet seems silent, yet it is telling a story. Every speck of dust is a tiny memory, a sedimented trace of millions of years of change. But if we listen long enough, we realize the Earth does not tell in words. It tells in silence, a silence not empty but crowded with what has been. Rains have fallen on this ground millions of years ago. Footsteps have passed, seeds have scattered, bodies have returned to it. And through it all, the Earth did not speak, did not lament, did not claim to be an archive. It simply lay there, serene, receiving, regenerating, receiving again. When we dig into layers, we think we are studying the past. But truly we are disturbing the planet's sleep. For the Earth does not keep for us, it keeps for itself. It remembers in ways we cannot grasp. It remembers by not selecting, not arranging, not judging. To Earth, a broken shard, a bone, a grain of sand are equals. All become sediment, all dissolve into silence. There is a strange truth. To know more, we must draw closer to silence. Only when humans stop speaking, stop extracting, does the Earth open its mouth, very softly, in its own tongue. That tongue has no sound. It is the warmth we feel when we press our palm to the ground, sensing a vast life that needs no proof. Every civilization has crossed this ground. They raised buildings, etched promises into stone, and one day, all lay down again with the very letters they had carved. Funny, isn't it? We think we are making history, while the Earth sees it as a short season in its long cycle. It does not keep glory, nor does it keep guilt. It keeps only essence, that all things will dissolve. Earth does not distinguish person from grass, king from passerby. It holds all, grinds down every boundary, then births new shoots from that common dust. Perhaps that is why, in every culture, people call Earth Mother, the source and the return. But if Earth is Mother, this mother has a trait. She does not retell the old stories. She holds them quietly so that life may continue. No judgment, no choosing, no regret. And because she does not tell, every memory within her becomes sacred. Archaeologists lift potsherds, spearheads, footprints, and rejoice at proof of existence. Then they set them back and brush sand over them, understanding that what matters is not the object, but the space around it, the hush the Earth has wrapped it in. Like an elder's memory when details have blurred, only a feeling remains, both true and faint, warm and far away. That is how the Earth remembers, not in images, not in narrative, but in the feeling of being. If we could hear it, the Earth's voice would be very slow, so slow no human could wait for one sentence to finish. For the Earth speaks in millennia, while we understand in minutes, hours, lifetimes. That gap makes us think the Earth is mute. It is not. We are simply too impatient to listen. Earth does not resist, does not cry out, but sometimes when it splits or trembles, we realize its silence has limits. It does not rage, it restores balance. Each time we bend down, shaken, and for a brief moment we understand, we have never been this planet's owners. We are noisy guests, lodging on its surface for a while. One day, every city will fall, every structure be covered, and the Earth will do what it always does: swallow, transform, renew. It will turn concrete into new stone, plastic into sediment, and our voices into underground moisture. No one will tell our story, but no one needs to. The earth needs no narrator. It will continue writing history with grains of dust, with roots, and with a silence no language can record. Perhaps that is nature's perfection. All that is spoken will fade, only silence endures. And within that silence, all civilizations are equal. All voices are heard again, not as sound, but as a blurred presence in the earth's long breath. If someone asks what remains when everything has passed, the answer likely lies right beneath our feet. Earth does not speak, but we can feel. And when we can feel, we will know Earth has never forgotten us. It is simply remembering in its own way. There is a question no one wants to ask, yet it always waits there, on the thin line between science and feeling. If another civilization existed before us, would we be brave enough to believe? We are used to seeing ourselves at the center of the tale. On every map, Earth sits at the center. In every history, humans are the summit. All before us is called prehistory. All after us imagined as the future. Between these two, we have forged the illusion that history happens only once. But if there was a second time, or a third, if intelligence is not the product of a single species, but the breathing of the planet itself, and each time it appears it also disappears, like monsoons, like tides of mind rising and falling, how would we respond? Most of us would deny it, not for lack of evidence, but because it would force us to face ourselves. If we are not the first, then all we do, our works, ideals, ambitions, become repetition. And that is more frightening than extinction. We want to believe intelligence is special, that creativity, feeling, music, love are uniquely human. But if someone loved, created, dreamed before we knew the word human, then suddenly we shrink, uncomfortably small, a late memory of a cycle larger than we imagined. Science may accept a hypothesis, but humans need meaning. And meaning does not like to share. We want to be first, for otherwise everything feels unmoored. Yet the universe's truth has never orbited our desire. Stars have been born and died billions of times before any light touched human eyes. Intelligence, like stars, may have flared somewhere, then gone dark, and from its ash, another form of understanding born. We live within a cycle of awareness, and the astonishing thing is, we do not realize we are repeating. For each civilization thinks itself the last. Each intelligent species believes itself the destination. Perhaps that is intelligence's native flaw. It does not only wish to exist, it wishes to be exceptional. It may be that this pride is why civilizations vanish, not by war or asteroid, but by the belief they cannot vanish. Death arrives not from outside, but from within perception. When we stop listening, stop doubting, stop learning. If one day we found clear traces of a mind before ours, a structure, a technology, even a fragment of memory, we would have to redefine everything. Not only science, but ethics, religion, history, and the soul's place in the cosmos. Yet perhaps the hardest part is not finding, but believing. To believe, we must accept we are no longer unique, and that truth, gentle or harsh, would turn this world. In a sense, we stand between facing mirrors, one reflecting a distant past, the other a future yet to be. Between them is our own image, blurred, repeating, smaller with every echo. Perhaps that is history's nature, an endlessly doubling mirror, in which every civilization is only a reflection. And humans, however we strive, are no more than light passing through a glass, fading into our own reflection. But if someone truly existed, and if they once failed, perhaps the gift they left us is not a trace, but a chance not to repeat their error. Thus the question, can we bear to believe, is no longer about the past. It is a question about the future. For when we learn to doubt, we begin to listen. And when we learn to listen, we can change. Perhaps in the faint light of the night sky where stars burn quietly, memories are watching us, not judging, not waiting, only hoping that this time we will hear what they missed. Perhaps after passing through all time's layers, through stone, through sea, through myth and the empty spaces, the only thing we truly learn is not certainty, but humility. Before the universe, we are so small that even light from the nearest star takes years to reach us. And we, with a blink, erase thousands of years of history. Between such scales, we still ask, who came first? Who came after? Who was the first? But perhaps time has no notion of first. It only has motion, like the universe's breath with no beginning and no end. We are only part of that motion, a small note in a score replayed over billions of years. Perhaps there were notes like us, civilizations that loved, created, doubted, and then sank into silence, leaving nothing but the feeling that they once understood. Now it is our turn. We too are leaving our marks: plastic in the sea, carbon in the air, tall buildings, songs, memories stored as data. But all will fade. Only the fact that we once asked will endure. Time, an old storyteller, sits between spaces and smiles at our attempts to grasp it. It knows we will tire, we will fall silent, and in silence, we will understand. There is no proof we are the first, nor proof we are not. Perhaps that no longer matters. What matters is that we have learned to ask. For it is the question, not the answer, that keeps intelligence alive. Each time we lift our eyes to the sky, we look not into emptiness, but into time's mirror. Each star is a memory, each ray a reminder that we are not alone, and not the center. Perhaps, among those countless points of light, another civilization looks back at us, asking the same question. Are we the first? And perhaps the only reply both receive is the echo of each other. In that moment, every difference, between us and them, before and after, human and not, dissolves. Only the sense of being remains. A small, fragile existence that can wonder, listen, and love. Someone once said, "We are not the universe's product. We are the way the universe knows itself." Perhaps that is true. Wherever it arises, intelligence is the universe's eyes upon itself. Each civilization is a brief flare, and when one goes out, another sparks. No one is first. No one is last. All are beats in the rhythm of understanding. Seen this way, what is terrifying is not to vanish, but to live without realizing we are living in a miracle. For every breath, every thought, every glance at the sky is proof we exist within a chain of wonders, stretching from the universe's dawn to now. And perhaps when we lower our head and lay a hand upon the ground, we are touching the memory of a mind that once lived, once asked our very questions, then dissolved into wind. We need not know who they were, for perhaps they are touching us, through atoms, dust, currents of energy. All of it becoming one, and time merely the way the universe changes shape to keep speaking to itself. If anything is worth carrying forward, let it not be fear, but humility. Humility opens the door to understanding, while pride closes every answer. We humans have gone farther than any other species, and yet forget more easily than any. Perhaps the only thing that makes us worthy of our mind is knowing when to stop, to be still, and smile at the unknown. For within not knowing lies infinite room to learn, to listen, to love. And in each small spark of understanding, the universe recognizes itself once more. So when this story draws to a close, leave a hush at the end. Not a period, but a rest in a song that continues. Listen closely, and there is sound within the silence. The sound of time breathing and of intelligence, though gone, returning. What is most precious after this journey is not the answer, but the moment we pause to ask. We have passed through stone, sea, layers of time and memory, touched our own smallness, and realized that intelligence is not power, but awakening within the infinite. Perhaps we are not the first civilization. Perhaps we are the only voice still echoing. Either way, Earth goes on breathing, and the question remains, quiet, patient, awaiting the next to inquire. If you hear that call too, stay with us to keep listening to the universe's quiet stories, where time, mind, and humanity meet in silence. Subscribe, share, and help keep this flame of curiosity alive. For one day, when all civilizations have folded into soil, curiosity, fearless and unbounded, will be the one thing left to retell our story.